Okay, so I can pick up where I left off um, with the test of the Shakti Cluster and the Solstice Ritual. I just wanted to recap that because I lost my brother, and that was a prompt or a boost from the earth to heal my mind, to be more connected with the wisdom of Gaia Sophia, being more intuitive and less linear and shut down or blocked, was the beginning of my healing, which in a sense culminated with this solstice ritual. Because of what I was describing as far as family dynamics, but also another somewhat like a mushroom trip with a shamanic healer who was trying to help me with panic attacks and jaw clenching. Throughout the last 25 years, I have participated in public pagan rituals. I started a solitary practice of my own, using my own materials, as well as opening up my creative self to, let's say, more inspired art rather than just copying and pasting. I went to vocational school and high school to learn commercial art, such as it was at the time in the mid 70s, which emphasized that grayscale kind of art, drawing pictures of products and things like that, or doing lettering. Just really focused my creativity and shut it down. Nonetheless, that's the other aspect of the twins. It's not just me and my brother, but I have this male aspect to myself that has come up in many of my relationships of being controlling. And I used to think that that had to do with, the abuse. But when I look at astrology, I'm also an astrologer, as well as a homeopath, and, all these other things that require rigor in discipline. There's the twinning, where I have this duality between, really having a lot of discipline and, being on a strict diet for whatever reason. And then I just got to break out, right? There's an aspect in astrology that is called a T-square. So my rising sign is Libra. Libra is the scales that wants to create balance. My Sun and Venus are at the midheaven in Cancer. And then I have Saturn in Capricorn. Saturn is the planet that represents the punishing father or taskmaster or whatever. So there's even evidence in my astrology that my life has never been my own. And that's where I was going with this whole thing, is that it's been very obvious to me, at least, and when I compare notes with others, that I am just playing out myths in my life. not just the the incest wound and all that kind of stuff, but incredible numbers of myths. And I've always been attracted to mythology. And even as a very, very young child, 3, 4 years old, I would see these things in real life. I mean, I was spending so much time in nature because I didn't have to go to school. In fact, I missed kindergarten when I was in Louisiana. But I basically learned to read and write at home because my mom gave me some books and left me out to my own devices, and there you go. So there's this intellectual, logical bit about me that is part of that duality, and then there's that whole mythological aspect. So, I mean, I go to Mexico, and guess what I get? I go to the museum, and I get Coatlicue. She's the crone aspect of the triple goddess in the Mayan pantheon. So all these pantheons of all these different people have always been, I feel like family, whether it's Greek or Roman or Egyptian or whatever. They've always felt like family. So when on January 6, 2016, I went to find out how I could stop clenching my jaws. The healer said that it's not just my crazy family, that it's been centuries of repression, and that we needed to restore my soul and remove this layers of karmic debris, not cosmic debris, karmic debris. And I said, I'll buy that for $1, let's do this. I can't invest more money in my teeth anymore if I'm going to keep ruining them. So I don't want to belabor so much what it is about me, but it is about me because I felt that I was uniquely called to do this particular ritual because of the very cells in my body having been tuned in such a way to carry the weight of all the traumas that have occurred in the Iron Age. I'm not a victim, and I'm not a perpetrator. I've finally gotten my healing through this shamanic practice. Uniquely, it is because I believe I finally achieved, menopause, and am somewhat of I don't know what you call it, a wise woman, someone who keeps her menstrual blood in herself. By ancient and indigenous people consider a woman to be wise because they're not losing their wisdom every month through the blood of the uterus. There's a lot to unpack there, but it's a matter of maturity is the best way I can put it. And this is the last step of maturity of being the matriarch of my tribe, if you will. Unfortunately, most of my natal family are dead. So I get to be, just as my father made me his second wife and my mother wanted me to take care of her, that's where I was going with this whole thing about the generations. Like, not only did I pull my brother Mike into the situation to help me, and I helped him, and everywhere we went, it was the Mike and Darlene show, Everybody that knew Mike knew me, everybody that knew me knew Mike, But I was the chief cook and bottle washer in my natal family, and it was weird. So not only am I the daughter of a motherless mother who had a motherless mother, I am a childless mother. So doing something on the solstice is unique to me because the solstice begins the sign of Cancer. My birthday is July 5th. The significance of that is that the Cancer is Sun and Moon in opposition. Sun is traditionally male, Moon is traditionally female. When the sun is at its zenith in the sky, the moon rides low in the sky. When the sun is the lowest on the horizon, the full moon is at the highest. But also, Cancer is a sign of home and family. And also, the Cancer, just like the moon, is a water sign, and it's phasic, moody, nurturing. So it was just my tendency to nurture my parents. But in that process, there was an inversion of authority as well as protection. So in regards to the solstice ritual that I performed, I used the boost of the earth, just like I did in 1994, to not have any static between my being and the wisdom of the planet, Gaia Sophia, just as it had in 1994. It was like a direct, cable connection for your internet, if you would, rather than Wi-Fi. That's the best way I can put it. My intention, or what I felt was my mission, was to heal the birth wound of not just the son, but the mother. Having had a series of miscarriages when I was really, really, really trying to bring my brother back because of that statement. What do you want me to do with your bodily remains? Burn them and throw them in the river that runs through your garden. That was where I was going, like, oh, he wants to get back onto the surface of the planet, and he wants me to be the vehicle. So I tried my best to get pregnant, and I did. I got pregnant intentionally about 5 times, and every time I had a miscarriage. But in one particular time, I had a weird problem in that it was about a week after I had the spontaneous abortion that I passed this thing. It wasn't afterbirth, and it was very painful, and it was awful. And when I ended up in the emergency room, they told me that where the placenta attaches to the lining of the uterus, there is a scab formed, and that finally sloughed off. The issue is, though, is that that's what clued me into this idea of Chiron being the wounded healer. And traditionally, Chiron is a centaur, half man, half horse, but he was an immortal being. Nonetheless, the lore about Chiron is that it's the wound that heals, not the wounded healer. That by healing your own wound, you have compassion for others that have similar wounds. So as a mother with no children, that experience gave me sympathy for that kind of suffering, of having life within you die within you, and then having that scar, that spot that still, has to heal over. And if it's not, it's raw, and it's always going to tingle with needing attention. All right. And that's where I was going with the birth trauma. In the Iron Age, the Kali Yuga, that is basically the use of metal to scar the earth with agriculture. The agricultural revolution happened in ancient Sumer. Even though the Harappan society or civilization along the Sindh River or the Hindu Kush Mountains, they were householders and they were agriculturalists. They didn't stockpile the agricultural product, which is mostly grain. Going into a hyper mode of being sedentary instead of hunter-gatherers and going where the food is, they brought the food to themselves. And putting the plow into the earth and treating the earth as a servant or a slave, oppressing the mother and forcing her to bring forth her fertility according to the needs of humanity, rather than it being the other way around, where she's just giving of her bounty and humans are just being grateful and saying, oh, thank you, and creating this fear of this paranoid fear that externalizing that harm outwardly into the earth and towards each other is where we get the stratification of society, the writing of laws, people not knowing how to act because they cut with a knife themselves off from their mother. So there's a scar there that perpetuates itself, and all the actions of quote unquote civilization that is a product of that entropy that I was mentioning before. And it has everything to do with an Oedipus complex. Freud missed out on an important aspect about this Oedipus. Oedipus might have been hated by his father and feared by his father, and that fear created the incest wound. So, incest wound, mother mating with son, father fearing son's reprisal, son fearing father's reprisal, all that kind of stuff, as well as the rape of the earth at the same time and being cut off from the earth. And it's not, and so this twinning that I was referring to in the previous video, becoming distorted and broken apart And like I said, the different aspects of the material world becoming crystallized, more hardened and less flexible. And that a reboot is what is required for us to not only heal our internal representation of the cosmos in our own bodies, but also a recycling of all these myths. They keep coming up over and over again. They keep showing up, these stories that the ancients would tell. Even, the Garden of Eden kind of idea. These symbolic ideas just keep getting recycled, and that we're, like Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage and we're just actors, right? Where did he get that word? Where does this stuff come from? It comes from the earth and all these stories being told over and over and over again. So I set up this ritual to replay that and recognize all the iterations, all the generations of the Iron Age. It's like all the iterations of those that are quote unquote civilized, including conquest, rape, murder, envy, institutional violence, all of that stuff. Just the idea of a hierarchical institution, patriarchy itself, as a response of having an absent father. According to the fallen goddess scenario, Sophia dreamed herself out of the center of the galaxy and found herself in the outer material arms of the galaxy, being a plasma being that is just pure intelligence and power, was disorienting to her. And as she solidified into the planet Earth, she also incorporated that fear of, seeing Yaldabaoth, this lion-headed serpent dragon thing that was a product of her leaving the pleroma in the center of the galaxy, as well as not having her male partner with her. And that loneliness, as well as disorientation in where she is, and suddenly, not being fluid anymore, but being solid in a sense, a fluid solid kind of thing, was encapsulated in us as well. So part of this ritual was to impersonate the Bagalamukhi, but also the hero, to call in the hero, the sacred warrior, rather than the conquering warrior. The image of Shiva and Parvati. Shiva is the creator and the destroyer. He's the logical intelligence. But Shiva can't create anything. He just thinks it up. And then Parvati made Ganesha, their child, out of the surface of her body. That's an even better creation myth than the Garden of Eden, right? She created Ganesha while she was taking a bath, and all the products of her skin she molded into this little boy, because Shiva was always somewhere else, creating and destroying, or, doing whatever. That's imitative of the fallen goddess scenario. Thelete was still in the pleroma, and he didn't know where she was. Everybody was surprised. All the aeons were surprised. Where did Sophia go? And, during these different cycles, Thelete does come back and reunites those splits, So that's what I was calling in, is the sacred father god, and lining it up with the zenith of the sun, that male figure, but also the waxing moon on the 8th day of the lunar cycle. So a lot of the props that I was using had to do with that relationship of the sacred warrior, in sending his energy into the Mother Earth to create that divine alchemical wedding. But it's not just the Earth that is receiving that protection and guidance from a male figure, something I never had. I didn't have protection and guidance. I had to be my own protection and guidance. And I had to be my own mother as well. I had to create for myself what I needed. So by externalizing that to the heavens and to the earth, with the boost of the earth, like I said, with the mushrooms, I was able to accomplish that. But being the Cancer that I am, being the Libra rising that I am, I can't do that just for myself. I have to do it for other people as well. So part of the healing within my own body was accelerated. And as I was setting up the ritual space, I had been gifted those quartz crystals, so I used that to set up the ritual space. And as I was doing it, I was using bells to tune the crystals to this purpose, and using a simple chant that was by air, water, fire, and earth, be thou cleansed. And I must have done that about 10 times as I was setting up the grid. Okay, and I'm going to show you a picture soon of how that grid reflects the Shakti Cluster. I also used a picnic table. It's an altar, and there are certain elements that were on the altar that I just grabbed stuff that was in my house to I just threw a bunch of stuff in my house and took off for the mountains. I intended to be on Mount Evans because that's the closest 14er to where I live, in imitation of being in the Himalayas, because I think this is everything to do with Shiva and Shakti and Parvati and Ganesha, and those were the things that were the objects, the props that I was using to generate that energy of not just the twins, but also the healing of the wounded warrior, especially veterans, but also the victims of war, like we're seeing on the border of the US right now, like we're seeing in Syria and in Europe, like we're seeing, all this child trafficking that's going on, and bloodshed and sheer torment, pulling families apart. Families have had a hard enough time holding themselves together, but it's like the world is a big stage right now, and there's all this horror. And I felt it was uniquely related to this rape culture of the earth. Not, lately we've been getting all these things online and stuff like that about Me Too, and women protesting men being, objectifying women, and feel in their impotence, being violent towards women, addressing all of those issues in one ritual. And of course, I needed the boost of the earth in order to personify all of that in my own person, all by myself. And I intend to refine this whole thing so that other people can do their own version for their own healing. But I believe that my time of being alone in this journey is ending, and that other people are in feeling their isolation, that they see things that other people don't, are beginning to coalesce in an imaginal cell-like manner. And when I say imaginal cell, I mean imaginal cells are found in like those insects that I was near in the El Dorado Canyon that just hatched out. They were like cicadas of some sort, but different. I saw all the carapaces on the branches and even on the grasses that split open to release a winged creature, as a prop for understanding the mind of the planet. Is these type of insects that go through nymph stages, or caterpillars that turn into butterflies. They have these specialized cells in their body that are different than stem cells. They're imaginal cells, so that they can change, they can morph into a whole different form. If you think about it, a caterpillar is like a worm. It's got chewing muscles and little feet, and lots of feet, more than a butterfly does, and of course no wings. You see what I mean? A chewing insect turns into an animal that has wings and only 6 legs and antennae and a sucking mouth parts. How does that happen? They're called imaginal cells that have the intelligence and the signal given to it to transform the insect into something different, totally different. It's just a revolution. And I believe that we who see things that other people don't see are the imaginal cells of Mother Earth, of Gaia Sophia, and that by opening up our ability to transform ourselves, that we can aid in the transformation of the end of the Iron Age and usher in the next cycle, the Golden Age. And it has everything to do with our DNA. DNA is a double strand of like LCD crystals. They give off light. They can be tuned. They respond to resonant frequencies. So a person like me, I, in this ritual, became like a hermaphrodite. And part of it is because of the heritage that I have. And part of it is because I've been inoculated by so many men's sperm cells that I'm like a chimera. That, recently people have discovered that just because a sperm doesn't meet an egg in a woman's body doesn't mean that those packets of DNA aren't inoculating or fertilizing body cells, right? So that's the other aspect of the twinning that I was referring to in myself. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot do this ritual if you don't have the kind of background that I do, but what I'm saying is that if you examine your life and why you have been called to this, that you're different in some way, and you are also reflecting some part of her mind that keeps getting played over and over and over and over again, some role. And it may be coming from your ancestors, like Elisa mentioned, you know, she's got all this Celtic ancestry that's messed up. Well, everybody's ancestry is messed up in the Iron Age. And those of us that are those imaginal cells can help be like midwives to the new luminous child of the Golden Age. So just wanted to briefly show you the schematic of the me. You've got an egg shape, and then this section of stones that I set up are different, but you see, like the chalice and the blade, the vertical axis from east to west is like a sword or sperm and egg, serpent, you know, that's what it turned out to be. And like I said, I felt like I was just an instrument in somebody else's hands when I did this. I didn't pre-plan it. I didn't sit around and think about, oh, what could I put together here? I just did it. So I don't know how to make a video that would illustrate all of this. So I'm going to stop here.